Hey, thanks for listening to another episode of the Weldmonger podcast. I have a special guest today, and it's actually the not the first time I've interviewed him. It is Patrick Murray from Australia. He's better known on Instagram as Tig Junkie. How you doing, Patrick?
Yeah, good, mate. Thanks for having me.
All right. I got a few questions, a few basic questions. I think everybody's interested in how someone got started, along with a few other things and some things on the things you like lessons or kinda hacks that you learned along the way and on increasing your skill, but I'd like to just start off, just give me kind of a summary on how you got into this trade.
My parents owned a fencing manufacturing company, and I started off there pretty young, probably maybe 14, sweeping the floors and cutting material and stuff. And then, yeah, that just gradually, as I got older, started doing more and more, using more and more tools, eventually getting on the MIG welder, welding galvanized steel for a couple of years before I got into TIG welding. And that's what really piqued my interest, especially TIG welding aluminium. That was basically all we did there. No one even really knew how to set the welder to weld DC to do steel or anything. It was just aluminium. So yeah, that's basically how I got started. And then was there for about a decade after I finished school. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe, yeah, it'd be 6 years ago now, just started working for myself. I guess I just maybe outgrew it there a bit. I'm a bit of a compulsive skill acquirer, which is a bit of a weird term, I guess, but I just always be learning. And when stuff sort of stops becoming a challenge, then I kind of get bored with it kind of quickly. So I guess that's just how I ended up where I am now, wherever that is.
I have something that just occurred to me that I wanna show everybody, and you know what I'm talking about probably.
I have no
I'll step
idea.
away. I'm gonna step away from the mic for just about 10 seconds. Fab Tech, one year when Fab Tech was in Atlanta, I think maybe 2016, does that sound about right?
It was 2018.
2018, okay, 2018.
Yeah.
Fabtech rotates between Chicago and Vegas, and so this was in Atlanta this year. Our friend JD, who's a common friend of both of us, had a get together, called it a preheat at his shop. Had a big turnout, and Patrick flew over from Australia to attend Fabtech and to hang out. And he came to the preheat. And anyway, he brought a gift for me and JD both. This is the case. You can see just some nice detail on the case itself. But then inside the case, have this beautiful little stainless flask, logo etched on there. What a nice gift. Look at there. If I'd have just read it, it says FabTech 2018 on it.
Yeah. That's how I remembered it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just beautiful craftsmanship, polish. All the welds are beautiful. And that meant a lot to me, and I never really made enough of it. I didn't make enough of a big deal of it. I had a lot going on in my life at the time, as we all do. No excuse. But anyway, thanks again for that. I
Uh,
really, I mean, I'm holding on to it. It means a lot that somebody would go to the trouble and put that kind of effort into a gift like that, and then come over. Not just you came over just to hand me that thing, but come over, hang out with everybody. That was a fun time, and it was a fun Fab Tech. So thanks.
yeah. Yeah. No worries. Yeah. It was well earned, really. I learned a lot from your videos and podcasts back in the day. And I think that also, that was a lot of knowledge that I just consumed to just, learn more. And because I did so much aluminium, doing a project like that, pushing myself to do sheet metal, which I hadn't, didn't really touch sheet metal. It's all aluminium extrusions and all that. And it's just a good opportunity to, practice a different material and a different process. And there's only so much welding on scrap and whatever it gets. I don't think you put in as much effort to wanting it to be as good as it can be when it's just a bit of scrap. So when it has some meaning behind it, I don't know, helps the
Yeah.
outcome, I guess, when you care about what it's going to actually look like. So
Yeah, I have another friend who's very much a big believer in that too, as far as like if there needs to be some kind of skin in the it needs to be something that you're going to keep and hold on to for years for in order to draw the most attention, the most focus and all that, and there's something to that because in your mind, if it's scrap, it's scrap. It's going in the scrap
Yeah.
heap. So there's no avoiding that. I'll tell you a funny story though about Fab Tech. I don't know how many years later it was. Maybe it'd been the next year. It was in Vegas, and I was in Vegas at the baggage area at the airport, and some guy with an Australian accent said, "Hey, man, are you Jody?" I said, "Yeah, welding tips and tricks, yeah." And he said, "Oh man, great to meet you and everything." And I said, "Cool, man. Are you over here? Are you here for Fab Tech?" He's like, "What's Fab Tech?" He just happened to be there in Vegas, that we
Yeah,
ran into
yeah.
each other at the airport. I just assumed that if somebody recognized me that they were at an airport at Vegas and Fab Tech was in Vegas that year, he'd have to be coming for Fab Tech.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had no idea what was going on there, but it was a chance meeting, so it was kind of cool, kind of funny. Makes for a good story anyway,
Yeah.
you know. All right, so I have some exciting news for everybody. We have launched a new project, and it's basically Weldmonger Australia. And so my son-in-law Garrett is heading that up, and here he is to tell you a little bit more about that.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on the podcast. I feel like it's been a long time, a long time coming. But yeah, so obviously we've been doing business in the United States for a long time, and had a lot of customers who have reached out to us over the years and have wanted to purchase things that they can't really get locally, or there's been kind of a pain point with getting them, and it's expensive to get things shipped into Australia. So we saw an opportunity and said, "Hey, well, we can, we've got some contacts over there. Let's see if we can send some inventory there." And next thing you know, we're like, "All right, well, let's build a new storefront, and let's really, if we're going to do this, let's not do it like half-assed. Let's go ahead and get some more inventory down there." And so, fast forward a year of working on it behind the scenes, we just launched it July 1st. So we've been quietly doing that over about a month now, and we're getting ready for Aussie August, and going to have some products which kind of tie in perfectly with Patrick's product line. So that'll be available. Symbiotic engineering products will be available at Weldmonger Australia. So that's weldmonger.com.au for anybody who's interested in checking that out. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been a long process, but I think it'll be cool.
Garrett, refresh my memory on what all we've sent to Australia so far.
Yeah, so we've got the mainstays, the TIG fingers, stubby kits, all the Fiat cups, gloves, you name it. So we're excited about starting with that, but we're going to continue to grow it out. And so we're going to have a lot of Australian products, things that we can source locally there, and kind of give our customers a little bit of another approach, and maybe even bring those over to the US someday. Appreciate you having me on.
But talking about what you just mentioned about when you feel like it draws more skill, more attention, more focus if you're doing something that has some meaning to it. I'm remembering a time in my career where I couldn't weld aluminum. In fact, it's funny. I'll tell this story in its entirety at some point in time on another podcast. But I lost the job because I couldn't weld aluminum one time. I went and took a test for a company called Lockheed here, a big aircraft manufacturer, and I just thought I'd take a stab at it, but I'd never have touched aluminum, and I just totally screwed it up. And then after about, I don't know, 10 years later, when I had the chance to interview with Delta Airline, I still hadn't I tech ops for, the maintenance of Delta Airlines. I still hadn't welded aluminum and couldn't. And they wanted me to do this little quick shakedown test, just a couple of T-joints. And so the lead mechanic told the guy, said, "Hey, go over to the sheet metal shop, go through the scrap bin, bring back a few little pieces of stainless and a few pieces of aluminum." you know. And so he came back and all he had was stainless. He said, "I couldn't find any aluminum, but here's some stainless." And the guy was like, "Ah, it'd be fine. So just weld me some beads on." So if the guy had come back with aluminum, I don't know what that would have done to me. But fortunately he didn't, and all I had was stainless, and so I ran a bead on that and on a little T joint, something like 50 thousandths. Nothing special, but they just wanted to see if you could weld basically, and that's fine, and I got the job, you know. So I still couldn't weld aluminum, then I was all of a sudden within 6 months, I was tasked with training people to weld aluminum and everything else, MIG, stick for the ground support welders, and then TIG for the aircraft and all the metals that are welded in aerospace,
Yeah.
aluminum obviously one of them. And so, man, I accepted that responsibility. I had to get a stack. Just I shear up some half sheets of aluminum and just weld and weld just bead after bead and watch people. I think that was something that really gave me a leap, because I would probably weld. I didn't count, but probably 50 at least 50 butt joints a day. Maybe 100, just one after another, look at, okay, what I do wrong there, do another one, get where I could do 10 good ones in a row that would be visually acceptable. But it took a lot to get there because I didn't really, there was no instructor there. It was just like, self-taught kind of, I guess. And then later on, I moonlighted and I got to weld, miles of aluminum, and that really, really helped me too.
Yeah.
So what I guess, and this is not about me, but I say all that to ask if there was something that happened, an opportunity that you had in your career, something you really applied yourself to that you really feel like gave you that jump, that quantum leap to increase in skill level.
Hmm. Mostly when I started working for myself, which wasn't really planned. When I left the family business, and I guess, yeah, I guess it's pressure, which is kind of like your situation you just talked about. You've got to learn to weld aluminium because, like, you got to teach people to do it. Your job could depend on it. It's kind of make and break. So I guess that kind of happened with me when I started working for myself because I didn't really choose the direction to go in. I was like, I'll just do welding and custom metal fab. And that sounds, it sounds like, oh yeah, that's a thing, but it's so broad. And every job I had for the next 3 to 4 years come through the shop, not one of them was ever the same. So every job was like, all right, I've got to figure out how to make this work. And I've got high standards as well. So like, all right, I've got to figure out how to make it work and it's got to meet my standards. And I can't think of any single job in particular because each one kind of forced me to learn something. Someone wants a custom canopy made and it's all right, well, I've done sheet metal work in Fusion in CAD before. So I know I can do it, but I just need to figure it out. So, took measurements of the tray and everything. And I don't know if you call them canopies in the US, but like a big toolbox on the back of a ute or a pickup truck. I don't know if you have those, but very common in Australia. A lot of people have them. Usually 3 mil aluminium box, and people use them for camping or fit them out for tools and stuff. So that's kind of what I had to do. So it's like, all right, well, it took me a lot longer than maybe I would have liked it to. So it's hard to make money when every job you do is different because it takes a long time to think through the process and catch problems and things before they happen. You need to find the mistakes before you make them because it can be costly if you do. So yeah, draw it all out, get it laser cut and folded and then, assembling it and welding it out. I was going to say, that's not such a big deal, but even that, welding something of that size in sheet metal, which I hadn't really done before, it's very easy to make that look pretty shit and just tin can it. And yeah, so keeping it all flat. And luckily, a month prior to that, I just acquired a pulse MIG for aluminium. So that saved me really, because if I had to do that whole thing with TIG, it wouldn't have gone well. So,
I have
so yeah,
a
that's a
friend.
long-winded.
It brings a good point up though, because I have a friend, Andrew Carden. I've interviewed him a couple times. He was a world skills competitor.
Oh
Now
yeah,
he now he's
I
in the
know.
oil and gas oil and gas field industry. He's a supervisor, still welds, really great welder, great guy, great man. But on one of the interviews, I said, he was talking about his training for World Skills, and it's kind of unusual training because he was really on his own. He didn't really have any sponsorships. He had to go get his own sponsors to provide metal, and he really had to just scrounge to make it happen. But he made it happen. But one thing that really stuck out with me, he said he had some learning disabilities and things in school. He said I had to learn how to learn, and
Yeah.
that talk about a big statement. You can unpack that for an hour, but that's kind of what you're saying. You kind of had to learn how to learn because if every job comes along that's different, there's kind of a process in figuring all those different jobs out. That's a skill in and of itself, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's what kind of like led me to how I ended up designing and manufacturing products is just like I had to do that at times, just doing custom fabrication. You're always thinking of, not once has a customer walked in with drawings and plans and been like, oh, this is what I want. They might send me a photo of someone else's and they're like, oh, yeah, something like this. And, you try and not be high friction by asking them, 100 questions like, what hardware do you want to use and how do you want this to function? Because when you look at it from an engineering or design perspective, like there's so many ways to do one thing. Like even if you just think about a box, how it hinges and how it latches, does it have gas struts? There's so many ways to do that. And sometimes the customer doesn't know and, they're asking you to quote it and you're like, well, I don't know what you want. Do you want hardware that's like $500 or like $50? Like, and just that, I guess it really taught me how to design and like just think through processes and because I come from a background of working in production, I hate the friction of inefficiency where it's like, oh, where's this tool? Or the drill bits are like scattered everywhere in the drawer. It's like I wasn't always like that. Like I was the drill bits everywhere in the drawer. And then, eventually it just wore thin on me, like the friction of like, I just need to find this drill bit and quickly drill this hole, especially when you're working for yourself and your time is your money and you just want to get the job done and you're just like looking for all drill bits and stuff. So yeah, I kind of just developed, I guess, a way of working to eliminate any friction or inefficiencies as much as I can. Like I just can't tolerate them. So
I guess that brings
I,
us to that's a good entry point for talk about some of the product line that you've developed. You got a handful of products that you just said you come up with that kind of aid in efficiency and everything. So,
yeah,
what are some of those products and how did they? I always find it fascinating when somebody such as yourself or Jason from Fireball Tools. They got sick of just using a frame and square and doing things the old school way, and they said, "I got a better idea. I'm going to come up with this tool because it's a simple little design, but it makes people's jobs way easier." And that's what I'm seeing that some of the stuff that you've come up with is just really innovative and simple yet very effective. So what's kind of like the most popular thing, and then we'll go from there that you've come up with.
yeah. Okay, I've got one here. I've even got one in an Imperial, which wasn't rehearsed,
Thank you.
but so this is what I call a fabricator's ruler. Even though it's more versatile than that, it's just had to give it a name, so that's what I came up with. But so I would use 6-inch engineering ruler a lot at my job. I used a 6-inch engineering ruler a lot, and you know, you want to keep it in your pocket so that it's always on you because you're walking around the workshop. You might need it at the drill press, you might need it on the bench, all that. But they're pretty small and thin, and they're always getting lost in your pocket. Um, or you reach in there and it stabs you in the hand. Well, you've got a hole in your pocket, and then it's, because you've been carrying a ruler around in there, and you put it through the wash, and it shreds your pockets. Can never find them. That, and I did that for years, just put up with it really. And like the way I would use it a lot was base plates. You'd mark. I'm trying not to talk in metric, but let's say you'd mark 1/2 inch in from each corner to set your holes on a flange, and I'd just do that, manually as you would normally hold the ruler there and scribe it out. And, there's inaccuracies and, you know, inefficiencies in that. But for what we were doing, that's, a few millimeter here or there is not a big tolerance issue. So, and I did try carrying a small combination square in my pocket, but I don't know if you've ever tried that. That doesn't work very well either. So, and then, yeah, eventually I just kind of got fed up with that. And I was like, oh, what if it was just in a case and then, it's in your pocket. It's quick and easy to grab. You can pick it up off the bench easy, because I don't know if you ever tried picking up something that's as thin as one of those rulers with gloves on. You spend 5 minutes trying to pick it up. And yeah, so I just designed this case and 3D printed one, which, I mean, 3D printing as a whole, I could talk a lot about that as well in a minute, and I just did that for myself really. And I used it for a while, and I showed a couple of people, and they're like, oh, that's really good. And the more I used it, originally I designed it just as a case to hold the ruler, and you slide the ruler out and use it. But, you can lock it at a set measurement. So, and you can use the case to butt up against the material. So for marking in from corners like that, you just set it, mark it, and you can even leave it set and drop it down or whatever. And then you've got that repeatability and consistency. Same with cutting material. If you say you're cutting quite short lengths and you can't set up a stop for it, I just push the material with the case and I push the ruler up against the blade, lock it down, cut it. So you've got, repeatable measurements there without having to set up some kind of dodgy stop. If you're cutting small material and you set up a stop, it's pretty likely to catch and hit you in the face. So yeah, that's kind of how I started with that one. And yeah, the more I used it, the more kind of uses I found for it. Because the case is a set length, which is 180 millimeters, which I'm not sure what that is in imperial, but you can use it as a spacer. So because I know the case is 180 mil long, I can just set 20 mil length there, and then I know that this is 200 mil long, and I can use that as a spacer. Or maybe I'm trying to measure on the inside of something. You can put it in there and push it out, and then lock it and pull it out, and then you've got your measurement. Yeah, it became a lot more of a useful tool than I first anticipated it. And I think it, does just look like a ruler in a case. And, I've had every comment you can think of throughout the years, whenever you have a product that's new or kind of niche like that, someone's got something to say about it, oh, why don't you just use a combination square? And it's yeah, you absolutely can use a combination square, but do you want to carry that around in your pocket? And even if you do carry a 156-inch combination square in your pocket, you can't use the full length of that blade. I don't know what it would probably max out at before, it's going to drop out of the body. So because this is a pretty high tolerance machine case, this blade stays pretty true. I actually haven't measured it, but it would be pretty true to especially the further in the case it is, that slot, there's a slot that this blade runs in, and I think it's 0.05 millimeter tolerance, which I don't know what that is in inches, but it's really small. So that's square. That's as square as it's gonna, for fabrication work, it's more than what you need. And yeah, you can use like this actually comes out just over 6 inches of travel. So you can use that full range. And this one in particular, I've got two variants of this, and this one uses a standard off the shelf kind of ruler. I mean, I have these custom made and branded, which is just different increments on each side. Like I still want 0.5 millimeter increments, but I don't want it on both sides because it's kind of messy to read. So, but yeah, like say, and I sell replacements for these, but say you like damage this, like the way I kind of design my products is like, I very easily could have used a proprietary sized ruler for this because I got them custom made, but like, and same with the hardware, but this is fully serviceable. Like you pull this apart in 2 minutes and put a new ruler in there if you happen to, whatever, bend it, get spatter on it, but yeah, this one in particular runs the standard ruler and the case is slightly thinner than the other version. But because the ruler is thin, like it's good for working on like sheet metal or like a flat surface because you can like flex that ruler down a bit and still use it like on a flat surface rather than just using it on the edge of something. And then I've got another one which I can't see. I think it's in my shed.
The V-Block product there, handy?
Yeah, I got one. I got one here. I should have been more prepared.
Oh, you didn't know I was going to put you on the spot and ask you to look at your products.
Luckily, I still got a couple sitting around because I sent pretty much everything over to you guys.
Before we hopped on here, I tried to go on your Instagram and get a good understanding of, the core of your product line and the couple of things. One, three things basically stuck out at me, the ruler and these V blocks and then the persuader hammer, but anyway,
Yeah.
the V blocks, those are innovative. Explain a little bit about some of the uses of that.
So this is actually another product. This was probably the first product that I conceptualized way back in the day before I even knew how to design anything. And yeah, it's essentially like this is billet machined aluminium anodized, and it's got a 6 kilo pull force magnet in the bottom of it, which I don't know what that translates into, but pretty strong magnet, like more than like strong enough for what it needs to do. And then it has a shallow recess here, and that secondary recess just helps with like I made it big enough to fit pretty much any clamp you might have because they've all got different sized, swivel pads on them. And that just assists with it like not sliding off, but the magnet does most of the work there. And the other reason that recess is kind of good is because like you can use them flat on the bench as well, which is actually mostly how I use them whenever I'm working with round stock. Even if I just need to like do some layout on something that's round, I just drop a couple of these on the bench and drop the tube on there, and then it's not rolling around. It's locked in position there so I can work on it. And yeah, that little recess, say if there's like, metal filings on the magnet, rather like the magnet is on a flat surface, so it's easy enough to like wipe off, but you're never going to get all of that in a workshop setting like it's going to be on the bench and everything. So that little recess just allows for, if there is any filings or anything on the magnet, it's going to still sit flat on the bench because you've got that, there's clearance there for it. And yeah, I mean, initially how I first conceptualized it was that I wanted it to like clip onto the ball of like a G clamp rather than a swivel pad. And that was like the first thing I tried to draw in CAD and 3D print, like probably close to a decade ago now. And I didn't know how to model stuff. I didn't know how to 3D print. So like that was as far as it got. And then, I didn't do anything with it for like 5 years before I guess I needed them for something. I can't even remember what. And I, sort of looked at that design again, 3D printed some to use for that certain application. And then I was like, I should get some of these made. I probably put some feelers out on Instagram in my story or something, and got a little bit of interest from people. And yeah, this was the first symbiotic product, I guess. And that was before symbiotic was even a thing. Even the rulers, like, they were all branded as, TIG Junkie when I first released all that. And which, hindsight was a bit messy when I tried to move to symbiotic. People are DMing me on TIG Junkie being like, this guy's like stolen your design. And
Yeah.
yeah, that was a bit messy. But I mean, the uses for this is like they snap onto a G clamp. I mean, I'm sure we've all tried to clamp round stock with a G clamp, and like you can do it, but like you got to get it in the right spot. And like as you're tightening it, it wants to slip. So these basically eliminate, like they just make it so easy to clamp to round stuff. And like these will fit on the top and bottom of a G clamp or whatever kind of clamp you're going to use. Or you can just use one. And it's also good for like clamping flat to round, which like I've had to do in a few situations where like you've got plate coming off a round frame or something. And like you want to, and especially working with aluminium, like you don't have the benefits of magnets, which is great for working with steel and positioning stuff. Like there's lots of products that can help you position stuff on steel, but as soon as you go to stainless and aluminium, it's like, well, how are you going to hold that there? So yeah, that's kind of how that one started, I guess. And
You mentioned something earlier about 3D printing, and I'm kind of thinking that you might kind of explain how that is integral in your process, product development and stuff like that.
yeah, I feel like this is a big one. Like I think if you're working in fabrication, like you should have a 3D printer, and probably more so than that, like learning how to draw stuff in CAD. Like I bought a 3D printer before I knew how to draw stuff in CAD, and like a 3D printer is great because like, lots of people upload files to websites and stuff and you can download stuff and print it. But if you really want to solve like a problem that you have, if you can model something even basic, and you can 3D print it. Like the 3D printers now, like they're so quick and so affordable that like it actually doesn't make sense not to have one. Like I use it all the time, like 3D printing router jigs, like custom jigs for holding weird stuff. I had these stainless steel rings that I had to cut, and you basically you can model the ring, put a box around it, and like basically create a jig to like clamp that and hold it in the saw. And like you just cut up against the face so you can position it accurately, and it just saves so much time. Like it takes, once you know how to kind of do that, take like half an hour to do the drawing, a couple of hours to do the print, and then you're not trying to hold something really awkward on a saw, especially like a stainless steel ring like that, that's 50 mil diameter. Like how are you gonna, when you got to cut it in half as well, it's like you put it in the vise and cut it with a grinder, but like it's not very quick or accurate, or if you want to have consistency. So yeah, like getting a 3D printer like back in the day is probably what like has positioned me where I am now and given me the ability to design and manufacture products, because it forced me to learn how to model stuff, because I would want to solve a problem and I knew what I wanted it, I could draw it, but if you can't model it, then you can't 3D print it. So yeah, that really forced me to learn CAD and modeling stuff.
I went and
And I just,
visited a company right around 15 years ago. Very large company, and they had a ton of engineers and draftsmen and all that working for them in product development. And they had a 3D printing was still had been around a few years already then, but it was not like it is so mainstream today. But the guy, the main, head of the company said, there comes a point when you're with all your drawings and renderings and even 3D drawings and all that, there comes a point when there's just no substitute for holding something in your hand and seeing how you just learn more,
Oh yeah.
and you go, "Oh, this is a flaw. We can't access this place that we thought we could, or we didn't just omitted that on the modeling and on the computer screen, but now we see it in our hand, and now we make that change, and we just saved ourselves a ton of headache in production or whatever, things like that." But I thought it was very
Yeah.
intriguing, and I don't they're used for all kinds of things now, obviously. I don't but I'd like to get into it myself.
Yeah. I've got a Bamboo Lab P1S. I've actually got two. Uh, and like the second one I bought just as a redundancy because I, I blew a board on one of them after 1,000 hours I put on it in 9 months. And like, that's how much I use it. Just like, it's almost always running. And yeah, the cost of another one was like worth it just not to have the downtime on it. I think it was like 600 AUD, like, which is maybe 450 US. And like, for how quick they are and the value they provide, like they're just very much worth having. And like, yeah, you can model something and think that it works, but it's hard to grasp scale when it's on a computer screen and like what it looks like and feels like. So being able to, you know, 3D print that and check tolerances to a degree, like they're pretty accurate. I don't know. It depends obviously on the printer and stuff, but like I think like within at least 0.2 millimeters, just being able to like fail fast basically. And, it's like sometimes if I'm actually designing something, I won't even have finished the design yet and I'll just print it and like look at it and be like, all right, am I going the right direction here? Or like, what's this size like? And I mean, that's a lot cheaper than sending it to a machine shop and getting them to machine it out of metal, and then you open the box and right away you go, oh, that I totally overlooked that. So, for the cost of, sometimes
Yeah,
50 cents in plastic, like, and yeah, it's just, yeah, great way to develop things and
yeah.
make temporary fixtures and just so many uses. Yeah.
Yeah, even for production, if you've got something that you just doesn't warrant getting an injection mold made for yet, you
Yeah.
can at least get a viable product and get something that's feasible, and sell a few and see how the market accepts it, and then go from there, as opposed to guessing and going ahead and have that mold made, and then they don't
Yeah.
sell,
And then
something like that. Yeah,
yeah, or then you find out that, maybe there's something you wanted to refine, but you've just sunk cost into a
oh,
mold. So it's like,
that,
well, it's just gonna have to be like that for a while. Like,
yeah,
uh,
yep.
yeah,
Risk
yeah,
involved.
yeah. Like when the first maybe 100 or so of the fabricator's rules, this thumb wheel, I don't know if you can see that, but I was 3D printing them initially because like, that's another component to machine. Like now I get them machined from nylon and, they're way better now. But at the time, like I didn't have the money to get them machined, especially when it's a new product and that's an added cost of whether, you know, you can afford to do it or not. I'm not a big company or business by any means, it's just me. And to get, even something like that that's quite small, if you go to a machine shop and be like, oh, can you make 50 of these for me? Like, they're not going to be super stoked on that. And you could probably pay quite a substantial amount for that. So like, until you have capital to like get quantities made, like if you can 3D print it, then like, that's just what you got to do to, it's total feasible way of getting something moving. So
Cool. So symbiotic, that's the name of the product line now for the stuff that you've got.
yeah, yeah. So and that kind of came about because like I thought about it for a while and like whether it should stay under TIG Junkie or whether I wanted to like separate from that a bit. Cause like over the decade or however long I was like doing TIG Junkie, like it kind of became my identity a bit, and I kind of wanted to like just separate from that a little bit. So I was like, I wanted to rebrand it and it be its own thing. And yeah, symbiotic. I came up with symbiotic because like the relationship between the form and function and like how long it lasts. Like I call it fortitude. That's like my tagline. It's like form, function, and fortitude is like the relationship of those should be like symbiotic. Like it shouldn't sacrifice function just to look a certain way, and it shouldn't sacrifice, the form. I put a lot of effort into like making my products like look good, and like, I've got a couple of mates who have some of mine, and they don't really like using them because they're like, oh, they look too good, which is I kind of like because it makes you want to like look after it
Yeah.
and like have a tool that you take care of. Whereas like, I mean, there's a lot of tools now, and like just the market in general is a lot of like buy it and replace it. And like a big pet peeve of mine is like engineered obsolescence and like engineered replacement. And it's like I guess symbiotic is a bit of a pushback against that. Like if someone buys one of my products and like never has to buy another one, then like I'm happy with that. Like if it lives in the toolbox for the next 50 years and then like, your kid has that toolbox, then like that's what I want like my products to be, I think. Like
Heirloom products. Yeah. My
yeah,
grandpa, my
yeah.
grandpa gave me this, and still great today.
Yeah, yeah.
It's awesome. I was looking through your Instagram page earlier. Couldn't help but notice you have really gotten good at arc shots. That's a that's that takes a bit of work, doesn't it, to dial that
Yeah,
stuff in?
because I did a media production for a company or a welder that's being released here in Australia. And I will say that it's a Pulse MIG. And obviously Pulse MIG is just the arc on that is pretty outrageous. And yeah, I've got a bit of a system now and I've captured some like really good shots. I'll send one to you. I think you would
Cool.
be
Cool.
pretty
Yeah.
impressed with it. But
Yeah. Yeah, I know people have asked you and they've asked me over the years about my setup and my settings and how do I get to arc shots and all that. I've gotten to where I can give somewhat of an answer, but the truth of it is, and I'm sure you probably can identify with this. The truth of it is that it's almost like no two arcs are the same, that it takes different settings and different setups. What I did is I got a camera. I started using all kinds of different lenses. I made a spreadsheet with all the different settings. I took notes and notes and notes. Well, that didn't work. That didn't work. And then I finally kind of have a system now that I can get it within 4 or 5 tries, let's say. Sometimes I get lucky and I
yeah,
nail one on the first shot. But, the truth of the matter is it's just like you just have to get a camera you know, and figure it out. I ain't
yeah,
happy to tell anybody. I use a Canon video camera. The one I've currently got is like a Canon XA60, I believe, and it's probably about a $3,000 camera, I'd say. You can spend way more than that, obviously, on cameras. They have all the welding cameras now that have to be run through a computer interface and stuff with all kinds of filters, and they do a pretty good job, but it doesn't really look like it. A lot of those don't look like what we're seeing through the welding helmet. But I use a video camera. Some people use a DSLR. I use a different neutral density lenses, and other than that, so it takes a whole pile of settings and a whole, half a
yeah. A
dozen.
lot of trial and error.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
especially when you've got to do the welding and run the
There you go.
camera.
That's what makes it
And
really hard. My son-in-law, Garrett, was, helping me film, several years ago. He's running Weldmonger. I've been in leukemia treatments for 18 months and not a whole lot of welding videos being being
yeah,
shot. But when he was, it was so much better, you know, 'cause I kinda trained him on here are the basics on getting an arc shot, how to focus it and all that stuff, and we could get some stuff done, but when it's just me and arms wrapped around the thing and flip your helmet down and it bumps your cameras, your helmet's going down and game over, you gotta start over because it's not lined up again and you're only looking at a
yeah, yeah.
2 inch circle anyway, So anyway, you're an
Yeah.
arc shot compadre now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, could go into that a bit. But yeah, I only started using the camera maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Like we went on holiday and I took this like really old DSLR and I really enjoyed shooting manual on it and like learning the mechanism of it. And, then I just went down that rabbit hole of cameras and like it was something I learned how to use. I'm like, I have to like master it almost. Like I've got probably more money in camera equipment now than like fabrication equipment, which is a bit crazy. But yeah, I really went down that rabbit hole. One of my favorite things about posting those arc shots is like getting like, it doesn't matter how good it is or how good the world is, or like, it doesn't matter. There's always going to be someone who's like got something to say about it. And, that's fine. Like I just take it with a grain of salt now. Like years ago, I would probably get like, I would try and explain myself or justify what they're looking at or whatever. But like now I don't really care. Like, they just see the arc shot. They don't see like what's involved to capture that. And that like you're wrapped around all this stuff. And yeah, like to get a like perfect world by Instagram standards, like with what you need to do to capture something like that is just like, good luck. So
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up about comments and all that kind of stuff. There was a there was a post I don't know how many years ago it was you made, on you got some comments on a aluminum weld, I think, like that'll never hold, that didn't fully penetrate. I don't know what it was, but it's this the normal
yeah,
stuff that we all deal with. If you post anything, you're gonna get somebody that doesn't think it's good,
yeah,
and then you follow you followed it up with just the most outlandish destructive testing on the weld that, dragging it behind a vehicle, shooting it with a shotgun, kind of stuff like
yeah,
that. I thought it was hilarious, but that, that is Instagram, and that is, things go in cycles. And I were talking about this a couple weeks ago. Community aspect of Instagram has shifted a bit in the welding area, and like I said, everything just goes in cycles, and there's another saying too that marketers ruin everything, and that's kind of what happens. You get a good
yeah,
community and then somebody comes in and inserts themselves into that community that hadn't really contributed at all, but they're just trying to sell their stuff and whatnot, so, you know, it's still pretty good. There's still a lot of helpful people on there. I'm fortunate to know a lot of them. You're one of them. Guys like Isaac, IC Weld, JD Brewer, my good friend JD Brewer. I could name off, probably 50 or 100 people that if you were to Instagram message them right now and you had a problem with your aluminum welding or whatever, they would respond and help you, you know? So
yeah,
there's
yeah,
still the good, but it has shifted a little bit to where it's not quite like it was back when we had the preheat at JD's and everybody was, it's almost like family, at that
yeah,
time.
yeah. And like just on that, like if there's younger people out there who are like, or just anyone who's trying to like seek advice, I used to have a lot more time than I did now, or than I do now, you know, and it takes a lot of time to respond to people's questions, or I can't even look at my DMs anymore. I don't know what yours are like, but mine's so full of spam that like I
Yeah.
really have to have to sift to try and find any like actual messages. And you know, I'll get a lot of people asking questions, but sometimes it's just like, oh, what are your settings for this? And it's like you're much more likely to get a response from me anyway if it's like, hey mate, how you going? Got this problem. Like, thanks in advance. Like, any help would be great. Like, if someone messaged me and they kind of take that approach, I'm way more likely to respond than someone just sending me a question like I'm Google, you know, after some like free consulting work, basically. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
I read you.
yeah, yeah.
So you're doing a little bit of camera work and, studio type work that's part of your business now as well, and as well as fabrication and other services?
Yeah. When, when people ask me what I do, it's a pretty hard question to answer because like because I, am self-employed and like I have just acquired skill sets over the years I I was also diagnosed with ADHD about a year or so ago now when my daughter was 6 months old, and that like kind of changes the way you function and stuff. It like really hit me. In hindsight, it's like really obvious because I've never chosen a specific direction, like which is why I did custom fab for so many years and took on, all these different projects, even though it's not an effective way to run a business or make money, like, because you can't get efficient at anything if everything you do is different.
It's hard for me to concisely answer if somebody asks me what I do. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I say I'm a YouTuber. Do I say I'm a welder, welding instructor? I sell welding supplies online. I do all those things, but
Yeah.
I'm a podcaster, I guess, you would say. I've never really put a whole lot of time into my elevator speech. I'm not a Delta Airlines or a General Motors or anything. I don't even think of mission statements helps those people.
It's funny because like a couple of years ago, my accountant was like, this is technically like three businesses. And I was like, no, that's just what I do. It's like, because yeah, I do, sometimes I just get welding jobs come through. Sometimes it's fabrication stuff. And I'm doing less of that now just because I don't have the time. Like, I've got an almost 2-year-old now and like I parent like 3 days a week and then like besides the weekends. And then my wife would take over at like 3 and then I'll work from like 3 to midnight. And it's a lot easier to do that. Like you don't really want to be banging around on tools and stuff. So it's just that's kind of changed my workflow a bit as well. But yeah, I've done product design and helped other companies develop and refine their products. So I don't know what you'd call that, but and that was actually good. Like that was a situation where I knew I could do it because I had done it with my own products. And then because I was doing it for a customer, it really forced me to like elevate my understanding of that whole, taking something from concept to manufacturing. So I, yeah, do that as well. And then, yeah, do some media like product photography and videography for like, I guess, product demonstration stuff for some brands. And not all of that goes through my Instagram. That's, that's, I guess, media generation for their marketing assets and whatever. And then, yeah, I got Symbiotic as well. And just recently did some consulting on helping some company get their like pulse mig set up. And, they hadn't done aluminium before. So that, that's a whole thing they had to learn to understand. And so, yeah, it's pretty broad what I do, but I guess that probably sums up most of it.
Well, it's time to sign off. We've been at this long enough, and I guess we could do a part two someday and dig into some more of the stuff. But anyway, I really appreciate you being on, Patrick. Wish you the best with your family and with your new symbiotic product line and all your new endeavors. So appreciate it. Good to have you.
No, thanks for having me. You too, man. Thank you.